Berlin, February 12, 1941. Inside a vaulted conference room on Invalidenstrasse, smoke curls under the brass chandeliers as German engineers study footage from North Africa. On the reel, grainy, dusty, sun-bleached film, a strange little vehicle hops over dunes like a frog. Boxy. Unpainted, no armor. A windshield like a school bus. A Willys MB, a Jeep. Oberstleutnant Fritz Kohler, one of Berlin's top mobility engineers, narrows his eyes and scoffs. "This," he says, flicking ash from his cigarette, "is what the Americans call a military vehicle?" Laughter ripples through the room. "It looks like a child's toy, a farm tractor with a horn." Another man mutters, "Maybe it's for their nurses." No one takes it seriously. Not yet. But out in the hall, just outside that room, a young intelligence officer overhears them. And he hesitates. Because last week, near Tobruk, he only watched that toy pull 3 wounded Tommies out of a minefield. Alone. It didn't look like much, but it moved when nothing else did. And what none of them in that room know, what none of them can imagine, is that within 2 years, that same little box on wheels will outrun every panzer from Tunisia to the Ardennes. The sea off Tripoli gleamed like polished metal in the morning sun. February 14th, 1941. The Africa course had arrived. Rommel stood on the dock, hands behind his back, boots planted like a statue. The air smelled of oil, salt, and war. Around him, cranes offloaded elegant, deadly machinery, as die KFZ, 251 half-tracks, BMW R75 motorcycles, 88mm guns with crews that treated them like religious artifacts. German precision hummed through every bolt. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. His men believed they were the sharp edge of history, the purest steel of Europe. Everything they brought, every vehicle, every part, was a product of engineering worship. Crafted, calibrated, symmetrical, not a bolt out of place. Their maps were crisp. Their engines sang. Their uniforms cut like sculpture. They had no idea the desert was already laughing at them. Because 100 miles south, across shifting dunes and mirage-choked ridges, another force was moving. Slower, louder, but relentless. They weren't German. They were British and American supplied. And among the crates and khaki canvas, a strange shape kept appearing. Square, stubby, absurdly small. The Jeep. Rommel's staff had heard rumors. Light reconnaissance vehicle, they said. Made in Ohio. No armor. Open top. Barely enough space for 4 soldiers and a radio. A German liaison officer glanced at one and whispered, "Why send such an ugly machine to war?" What none of them understood yet, what they refused to understand, was that America never built machines to look good. They built them to win. Back in Berlin, engineers believed their tech would dominate the desert. Complex gearboxes, 6-wheel drive, sophisticated carburetors, custom-fitted transport trucks for each division. Logistics were a matter of pride. And yet, within weeks, their half-tracks began to fail. Fuel lines clogged with sand, radiators cracked in the sun. Spare parts didn't arrive. When something broke, it stayed broken. Meanwhile, Allied patrol kept peering in places the Germans thought unreachable, over hills, through wadis, past minefields. Every time they showed up, that damn jeep was there, moving, hauling, turning, climbing. No roar, no smoke, what? Just that strange puttering noise, like a lawnmower that refused to die. One Wehrmacht mechanic in Derna said, "It moves like a joke, but it never stops moving." In Berlin, the illusion was still intact. German generals believed what they'd always believed, that victory was a matter of design, order, hierarchy. But out in the desert, beneath a sun that cracked steel like clay, something different was happening. The war was shifting. Not because the Americans had better tanks. They didn't. Not yet. Not because they had better soldiers. That's not how the Germans saw it. But because somewhere in Detroit, someone had decided that 4 wheels and a flat hood were enough, as long as it never, ever stopped. And that, more than firepower, would change everything. The wind blew sideways through the dunes near Mechili. It was March 1941. Heat shimmered off the sand. Dust coated everything. Goggles, rifles, throats. Unteroffizier Paul Reiner wiped sweat from his eyes and kicked the side of his Sadi KFZ 250. It wouldn't start. Again. He checked the radiator. Boiling. The fan belt had snapped. Again. Second time this week. He spat, adjusted his helmet, and glanced east. There, on the horizon, something moved. 2 silhouettes. American shapes. Jeep. The damn thing bounced like a rubber ball over the ridge. No tracks, no escort, just dust trailing behind it, like a comet's tail. Reiner squinted. No armor, no gun, just 2 grinning Tommies in goggles, one hand on the wheel, the other pointing, laughing. They were gone in seconds. He looked down at his own vehicle, flat tire, clogged intake, broken belt, and felt something sharp twist in his stomach. Back at headquarters, he filed a repair report. 3rd one this week. The Oberfeldwebel barely looked up. "Drive slower," he said. "The heat punishes fools." But Reiner knew heat wasn't the problem. Not really. The maps they used didn't show half the terrain. The ink ran in the sun. The compass needles twitched like scared birds. Water took too long to arrive. Fuel even longer. A week later, a patrol went missing after their half-track died outside Elagala. They'd been just 11 kilometers from a resupply point, but the sand made that distance feel like 100. Their tracks vanished in the wind. All that remained was a single boot, half buried, pointing east. The men whispered about that jeep. How it had passed through that same area 2 days before, and returned without a scratch. Reiner didn't believe in ghosts, but something about that little machine haunted him. It wasn't fast, it wasn't strong, but it kept showing up again and again where no one else could go. And every time it seemed smaller, like the war itself was shrinking around it. The air in the wadi stank of burned oil and fear. April 1941. 40 kilometers west of Benghazi. A German reconnaissance unit sat stranded. 4 armored cars, low on water, out of fuel, surrounded by silence. They could see the supply convoy on the next ridge. Just a flicker of light on metal crates. So close, you could almost smell the gasoline. But not one of them could reach it. The engines had stalled the night before. Fuel lines clogged. Sand in the carburetors. Oberleutnant Karl Strasser swore under his breath and kicked the wheel of his command car. His men sat in the shade, helmets off, mouths dry. Then from behind a dune came the sound again, a soft, metallic cough. Familiar now. The Jeep appeared, green, dusty, absurd. No doors, no top. Its windshield was down, held by twine. It climbed the ridge like a beetle, careless, stubborn. On its hood, jerry cans and a crate of rations. 2 British soldiers waved as they passed. One tossed an empty cigarette tin. Strasser didn't wave back. That night, he wrote in his log, "We are immobile. They are not. That is the difference." 2 days later, a medical convoy from the Africa Corps attempted to cross a ravine south of El Derna. 2 trucks flipped. One caught fire. The road was gone, eaten by rain and time. A pair of jeeps made the crossing the next morning. They moved slow, but they moved, lined with ropes, boards, even sacks of flour, to gain traction. Their tires dug in, 1 inch at a time. By midday, they were already headed back, with 4 wounded men and 1 barking field medic. The Germans watched from the hill, silent. One of them, a mechanic from Dresden, stepped closer to the edge. He had seen inside a captured Jeep the week before. "What did you find?" someone had asked. He'd replied, "Nothing impressive, just logic." The Jeep's engine could be fixed with a spoon and wire, its tires patched with rubber, and spit, its parts, modular, replaceable, simple. German vehicles required manuals, tools, precision torque. The Jeep required one thing: keep going. Later that week, Strasser overheard 2 engineers from HQ arguing in a tent. "This isn't about firepower," one said. "This is about movement." And the other replied, "Then we're already losing." Out on the desert rim, the dust trails never stopped. Jeeps kept coming, smaller than tanks, weaker than trucks, but always in motion, always moving forward, even when nothing else could. It was May 1942 when the number first appeared. Oberst Dieter Vollmer, head of vehicle logistics for Panzergruppe Africa, unfolded a captured Allied report in his command tent near Guzla. He expected lies, exaggeration, propaganda. Instead, he found a single line typed in bold: 135,000 units. Standardized light utility vehicles. U.S. production to date. He read it twice. 135,000. He sat back. The canvas roof creaked overhead in the heat. That number, if true, was more than every Axis transport vehicle in North Africa, the Balkans, and parts of the Eastern Front combined. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands. Later that evening, during a sandstorm, his adjutant knocked over a crate near the radio post. Inside were captured manuals, American maintenance guides, printed on cheap paper, easy to read. Diagrams simple enough for a farmhand. Field repairs, tire changes, fuel pump swaps, done in minutes. One page showed how to restart a Jeep with a pencil stub and a shoelace. Vollmer stared at it, silent. Across camp, Unteroffizier Reiner, the same man whose half-track had died weeks earlier, watched another Allied Jeep roll past from a hilltop. It bounced through dry creek beds, tires flinging gravel like water. Its driver wore no helmet, just goggles and a bandana. The Jeep stopped, shifted, climbed sideways across a ridge that would have broken the axle on any German scout car. Reiner didn't say anything, but he felt it, low in his chest, a twist, a kind of quiet panic. He turned to a younger soldier beside him and said, "We laughed at it." The boy nodded. "And now?" Reiner didn't answer. Below them, the Jeep vanished into the dunes, still moving. Tobruk fell in June. But something else had already collapsed. In the ruins of a British outpost near the coast, German engineers found crates of American manuals, field instructions, Jeep schematics, pages, soaked with grease and desert sweat. Lieutenant Heinrich Blau, a motor pool officer from Munich, studied the diagrams by candlelight. He flipped a page and stopped. An entire chapter devoted to fixing a snapped axle using a piece of wood, a belt, and wire from a fence. No precision tools, no factory parts, just motion, restored, however crude. He whispered, "They designed for failure and built for recovery." Behind him, a Feldwebel examined a Jeep captured outside Tobruk. Its windshield had been blown away, the body riddled with bullet holes. But the engine still ran. It coughed. It smoked. But it moved. The Germans painted it gray, marked it with the Iron Cross, and added it to their column. It ran for 11 days without failure. Every German vehicle that flanked it, one by one, broke down. When asked why they kept it, one corporal said, "Because it listens to the desert." A week later, a captured American mechanic, just a boy from Kansas, was brought in for interrogation. He didn't flinch. He didn't boast. He just looked at the row of broken half-tracks and said, "Y'all built museums. We built mules." Vollmer received a confidential report that same month, translated from Intercepted Stars and Stripes. The article celebrated the 100,000th Jeep to roll off the assembly line. Every part, it said, could be replaced by someone with 2 hands and a wrench. Every design change was field tested, not by generals, but by privates. He underlined a sentence in red pencil. "We don't build them to last. We build them to win." That night, Vollmer stood alone near the motor pool. He watched as engineers tried to realign the steering column of a Mercedes staff car using a slide rule and silk gloves. He looked down the row of vehicles, all elegant, precise, fragile, and one Jeep, dusty and dented, still idling, still ready. The sound of its engine, low and stubborn, filled the air like a ticking clock. And for the first time, he understood what it meant. They weren't losing to weapons. They were losing to an idea. August 1944. Normandy. The Bocage country had turned war into a maze. Hedgerows taller than men. Fields cut by invisible paths. Sightlines gone. German tanks bogged down, their turrets unable to turn. Trucks snapped axles on unseen routes. Radios crackled with static and fury. But the jeeps kept moving, everywhere, like ants, in pairs, in packs, day and night. Major Otto Kramer of the 21st Panzer Division watched from a ruined church steeple near St. Lo. He'd ordered his men to block a narrow dirt road with felled trees and a burned-out Kubelwagen, a perfect trap. At dawn, he saw it. A jeep. It didn't stop. It turned, cut into a ditch, spun wheels in mud, then bounced over a fallen log and vanished behind hedges. Kramer lowered his field glasses. His hands were trembling. That night, he reread the latest logistics report. American jeeps had now been seen behind every sector, delivering supplies, evacuating wounded, laying communication wire. One had even towed an anti-tank gun up a goat path. Not one German vehicle could have done the same. In a nearby field hospital, Oberfeldarzt Hans Lorenz treated wounded men under candlelight. He glanced outside during a lull. 3 jeeps parked in a line, engines idling, blood smeared on fenders. Medics hauled stretchers with silent speed. No shouting, no chaos. One of the jeeps had a cartoon drawn on its hood, a pin-up girl riding a bomb. Lorenz turned to his nurse and said softly, "We used to believe in German order." She didn't reply. 2 days later, a Luftwaffe mechanic scrawled a note in his diary near Falaise. Their vehicles look like insects. They hum and scatter, but they do not die. We strike, and they return. We block, and they flow around us. He added one line in shaky script. We are fighting an enemy that doesn't stop to think. It just moves. At the edge of a collapsed bridge, a German captain tried to reverse his armored car after artillery broke the crossing. It stalled. Behind him, 2 jeeps arrived. American soldiers dismounted, rigged a rope line, and carried stretchers across a plank path. One of them waved. The king just stared. Later, he walked to the riverbank, sat down in the mud, and whispered, "We spent 10 years designing machines. They spent 10 months designing a war." He removed his officer's cap and placed it on the ground beside him. And when the last jeep vanished into the trees, he didn't look away. He just listened until its sound was gone. September 1944. Northern France. Rain fell hard over a makeshift airstrip near Chartres. Mud swallowed boots and blurred the lines between road and field. But still, the jeeps came. Every 10 minutes, like heartbeat. They roared down narrow lanes, engines sputtering, headlights dark, packed with everything from fuel drums to mail sacks to spare boots. The Red Ball Express had arrived. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't beautiful. It was unstoppable. Over 6,000 vehicles, half of them jeeps, raced through night and day, to keep the Allied advance alive. Gasoline, ammunition, hot coffee, dry socks. Each jeep knew its route by memory. One driver, Private Raymond Harris, scrawled a message across his dash in chalk. "Keep moving or die." Feldwebel Marcus Kruger of the 2nd Panzer Army watched from a hillside orchard. His squad had waited 3 days for replacement parts for their Opel Blitz truck. Nothing came. The horses were dead. The radios were silent. Below in the valley, 4 jeeps stopped by a fallen tree. In minutes, they had winched it aside, tossed branches, checked maps, and vanished. Kruger exhaled through his teeth. "Our men are brave," he muttered, "but bravery doesn't fix bearings." Later that night, a motor pool report reached Wehrmacht command. It listed 17 different models of German utility vehicles active on the Western Front, each with unique parts, unique tools, unique needs. Some required grease only made in Hamburg. Others couldn't run without a specific filter, now trapped in a besieged depot in Metz. By contrast, the Americans had one Jeep, every bolt identical, every tire interchangeable. Kruger saw it firsthand when they captured one intact near Nancy. Their mechanics tried to take it apart. They didn't need to. It explained itself. Inside its toolbox, simple wrenches, not precision instruments. The manual was just 60 pages, with pictures. Kruger looked at the side mirror, stamped Ford. The seats, marked Willys. The engine block, GPW. 3 companies, 1 design. No elegance, no ornament, just motion. "We build art," one German officer said bitterly. "They build answers." By the end of September, even SS officers had begun requesting jeeps when possible. Unofficially, quietly. Because when it came to reaching a front line or escaping a broken flank, pride didn't matter. Only movement did. And the Americans, damn them, never stopped moving. October 1944. A bombed-out rail yard outside Aachen. Twisted steel, scorched timbers. Wheels melted into rails. The war had eaten another city. But behind the smoke, movement. Jeeps, dozens, darting between rubble piles, their canvas flapping, antennas bent, windshields down. One hauled radio gear. Another carried a field chaplain and 2 crates of coffee. A third towed a 37mm anti-tank gun, barely larger than the Jeep itself. Oberst Vollmer, standing beside what used to be a locomotive, watched with glassy eyes. He'd seen tanks roll. He'd seen artillery thunder. But this endless rhythm of small, tireless machines, it unnerved him. That evening, a translated factory report crossed his desk. Willys Overland. They were building Jeeps not just in Ohio, but in Canada, Australia, even Iran. Assembly lines designed so that any man, woman, or teenager could build one. Fenders arrived in one truck, gearboxes in another. By sundown, a Jeep rolled off the line. Every model identical. No retooling, no delays. He highlighted one sentence. If you lose a Jeep, don't retrieve it. Replace it. It struck him like a rifle butt to the chest. In German factories, loss meant punishment, interruption, waste. In America, it meant opportunity to improve. At a rear logistics station, a Wehrmacht technician opened the hood of a Jeep they'd captured intact. Inside, he found a mix of markings, some bolts made in Michigan. A distributor stamped from Chicago, a carburetor cast in Pittsburgh. Each piece, he whispered, from a different place, and yet it fits. By contrast, German vehicles demanded uniformity. If a part failed, it waited for its twin from Stuttgart. If a man lost a component, he waited or walked. Meanwhile, GIs learned to bolt on anything. Steel, wire tape, in a Jeep, Bob or a bumper made from bed frame slats. Another had no seats, just crates labeled spam. And still, they moved. Back in Berlin, a staff engineer submitted a quiet report. He wrote, "The Americans do not worship machines. They use them and throw them away. And still, they win." The report was shelved. But out in the mud and frost of Europe, every German officer knew it. They'd built machines meant to last. The Americans had built machines meant to arrive. December 1944. The Ardennes. Snow swallowed sound. Frost bit through gloves and skin. Tanks froze in place. Silent giants, trapped in white silence. But the Jeeps kept coming. Through back trails, along riverbanks, between trees, no truck dared enter. They carried medics, wire spools, mortars, mail. Private Joe Fenton from Kansas drove his Jeep 17 hours straight, with a broken axle mount and 3 wounded GIs in the back. "I don't know how it kept going," he later said. "It just refused to stop." Across the lines, General Hasso von Manteuffel watched it unfold. He'd once commanded armored divisions on the Eastern Front, seen Soviet steel, Polish cavalry, and partisan sabotage. But never this. He ordered his staff to compile numbers on American mobility. What came back silenced the room. Over 640,000 Jeeps built. 1 Jeep for every 7 U.S. soldiers. Each factory could build one every 2 minutes. The average American mechanic required just 6 tools to repair any unit in the field. In contrast, Germany had 12 different types of trucks, each requiring different parts, diagrams, fuel mixtures. Von Manteuffel stared at the numbers. His hands didn't move. He thought of the endless conferences, the paperwork, the signatures needed just to requisition brake pads for a Mercedes 170 VK. Then he read the final line from the captured Allied memo. "If it breaks, fix it. If you can't fix it, leave it. If you can walk, another Jeep is coming." A silence settled over the bunker. Later that week, a panzer commander reported a failed push near Bastogne. He wrote, "We lost the bridge. Not to tanks, not to bombs, but to movement. They sent Jeeps around the flank, over logging roads we said were impassable." Even the Luftwaffe had noticed. In an after-action report near the Rhine, an air observer wrote, "The enemy moves like water. Their vehicles don't follow roads, they make them. They are small, but they are everywhere. Back in Berlin, a logistics officer summarized it all with bitter clarity. They built 640,000 mistakes and made them perfect through scale. The industrial machine behind it was terrifying in its simplicity. Ford Willys, Bantam, not working in unison, but in sync. Decentralized production, shared blueprints, national purpose. Every nut and bolt had meaning because it had a destination, and every destination had a road, even if it didn't exist yet. General von Manteuffel, once so proud of German engineering, admitted to a British interrogator in 1946, "We did not lose to tanks or airplanes. We lost to a little green car and everything it represented." Berlin, May 1945. Smoke still hung in the streets. Bricks cracked under boots. Windows stared empty like eye sockets of a dying city. Oberst Dieter Vollmer sat on a broken bench near the Tiergarten. No papers, no orders, just silence. He hadn't spoken in hours. A low growl broke the stillness. He looked up. 4 jeeps rolled past the Brandenburg Gate, mud-caked, dented, flags tied loosely to their antennas. American soldiers in wool coats, cigarettes dangling, faces young and tired. One jeep slowed. A GI in the passenger seat tossed something toward Vollmer. It landed with a soft clink, a pack of lucky strikes. Vollmer caught it instinctively. The jeep moved on without a word. He turned it over in his hands. The same gesture they made in North Africa. The same speed. The same sound. He remembered that day, in 1941, inside the engineers' hall on Invalidenstrasse. He'd laughed, called it a tractor for schoolchildren. He lit the cigarette with shaking fingers, watched the column disappear behind a curtain of gray rain. A young German boy passed by, barefoot. He stopped to stare at the fading jeeps. Vollmer looked at him and said quietly, "They didn't build a car. They built a war that never stopped moving." And then he said nothing more.